For maximum picture quality, it may be necessary to adjust the tracking control on your VCR.
Goodbye, baby.
Great noir poses the question, why me?
That sense of knowing that what you are doing is doomed, and you can't stop from doing it.
Major funding for this series has been provided by the Annenberg CPB Project, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the National Endowment for the Arts, with additional funding from these foundations and individuals, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the annual financial support of viewers like you.
Hello, I'm John Lithgow. Welcome to American cinema. The end of World War II in 1945 brought an era of homecoming, of rediscovering family, of rebuilding. That year, Hollywood premiered The Best Years of Our Lives, a story of a returning veteran and his family that would win the Academy Award for Best Picture of the Year. But another picture premiered that year that portrayed a different version of America. It was called Detour, about a man who wandered from a life of little possibility to one of total doom. When the Motion Picture Association first reviewed the picture, they refused to give it a rating. It had broken a rule. The murderer was not brought to justice at the end of the story. Instead, he was left to wander aimlessly the highways of America. For such stark stories, these pictures had their own look. Though they were uniquely American, French film critics came up with a name that stuck, film noir, which literally translates black film. They were black and white, they were dark, and they were often raw. In this breed of film, the only law was the rule of fate, the only order a kind of moral restitution where everybody dies at the end. But these films were always seductive. Listen to Richard Widmark tell you, it's hard to refuse a story of sex, money, and murder, as you will see in film noir.
It was the 40s, right after the war. Going to the movies was like going to a candy store, something for everybody. Popular films were melodramas, romances, musicals. The big song and dance. But that's not my kind of movie.
Things were yet to come.
You could always find me in the theater around the corner. People like me liked our pictures dark and mysterious. Most were B movies made on the cheap. Others were classy models with A talent. But they all had one thing in common. They lived on the edge. Told stories about life in the streets. Shady characters, crooked cops, twisted love, and bad luck. The French invented a name for these pictures, film noir, black film, that's what they called them, about a darker side of human nature, about the world as it really was.
As I was growing, these films were a part of my reality day by day. In other words, I didn't analyze them. I was affected by them. I related to them emotionally.
Who is it? Open up the police.
The first film that I can remember that I had to do very clearly what I knew on a daily basis growing up in the Lower East Side was Force of Evil, Abe Polanski's Force of Evil. It was about the numbers racket, and it was about two brothers. It portrayed a world that I hadn't seen on film before. In a very honest way, too.
Violation 974 of the Penal Code. Policy, the numbers racket.
I grew up in a world that the images in film noir reflected. Nightlife, people drinking in bars, gambling.
Don't you take the nickels and dimes and pennies from people who bet just like every other crook, big or little, in this racket? They call this racket policy because people bet their nickels on numbers instead of paying their weekly insurance premium. That's why policy.
You make the film according to your mood, the circumstances, the way the story is written, the influence of the writer on you, the actors on you, and so on. And if they're reflecting this general sense of jeopardy in life, which is what exists in all film noir, then it's a correct representation of the anxiety caused by the system.
You know, sometimes you feel as though you're dying. Here. And here. Here. You're dying while you're breathing.
And this is what this picture is about. How circumstances become more and more unendurable, and yet you must endure.
Freddie, what have you done?
Great noir poses the question, why me?
What have you done to me?
Why is this happening to me? And the very dark answer that it provides, an almost unacceptable answer, for no reason. For no reason at all.
Buddy, you look like you're in trouble.
Because noir is concerned with error, with confusions.
I think I'm in a frame. Don't sound like you. I don't know. All I can see is the frame. I'm going in there now and look at the picture.
It's the noir idea. We don't know what's going on, but we do know something bad is out there controlling events. For me, the great noir films are films about fall guys, a person who finds himself caught in a net. The more he struggles, the deeper and deeper he becomes entwined in nightmare.
Did you ever want to forget anything? Did you ever want to cut away a piece of your memory or blot it out?
Detour really comes in the first wave of noir production. It lays out a blueprint for how the noir narrative works. There's a character who has a secure job at the beginning of the film, has a secure relationship with a woman. The woman leaves to go to Hollywood, and this man goes to join her.
If only I had known what I was getting into that day in Arizona.
And this initiates a journey in which he, almost myth-like fashion, is picked up by a kind of messenger. This man dies under mysterious circumstances. The hero takes on the identity of a dead man, the most desperate thing you can do in film noir.
I saw it once he was dead, and I was in for it. Who would believe he fell out of the car?
Detour is quintessential noir insofar as it's so raw, it's so exposed.
Yes, I was in for it.
There's nothing to comfort you.
Instinct told me to run, but then I realized it was hopeless.
You enter the heart of darkness. It is a descent into hell, both visually and internally, from which you cannot escape until it's over with.
I knew him better than you did.
Okay.
Shortly thereafter, he picks up a woman who coincidentally knows his true identity.
Why should I believe you?
And traps
All
him.
the earmarks of a cheap crook.
Now, wait a
Shut
minute.
up. You're a cheap crook and you killed him. For 2 cents, I'd change my mind and turn you in. I don't like you.
Please open the door. Vera, open the door. Don't use the phone. Listen to me.
It's a character who is on a downward spiral from which he cannot emerge.
And I'm going to get even with you.
And the more he tries to eradicate the situation, the worse it gets.
Vera, don't call the cops. Listen to me. I'll break the phone.
There's some complete wackiness in a film like Detour. It's the wackiness of getting a murder scene with a phone cord and someone yanking the stuff, and on that level it's part Three Stooges, part Marx Brothers, quite completely surrealistic. It's sloppy, it's smelly, it's disreputable. That's what's nice about film noir. It's that it's really disreputable filmmaking.
The last scene in Detour, they couldn't get a seal of approval on Detour. It was all made. There is somebody who has actually killed somebody, and what is he doing? He's hitchhiking around. He's not in jail or anything like that.
Someday a car will stop to pick me up that I never thumbed.
So I put in just a few lines.
Yes. Fate, or some mysterious force, can put the finger on you or me for no good reason at all.
I think noir hit people so hard. It's because essentially at the core of it all, they're tales of survival in a completely naked fashion.
A certain kind of hard film full of difficult emotional things and explosions of emotional drama and anxiety was popular in the sense that people went to the movies to see that kind of thing.
If you go back and look over the plots of film noir, you discover that more than a quarter of the total films have protagonists who identify themselves as war vets. And what he discovers when he comes back from the war is not a secure place in society, but rather quite the opposite.
Multiplied and magnified, the insecurity of modern man has been tragically demonstrated in the catastrophe of total war.
One sees it, in a sense, as the continuing experience of wartime trauma in a domestic situation.
Now we start looking at each other again. We don't know what we're supposed to do. We don't know what's supposed to happen. We're too used to fighting, but we just don't know what to fight. You can feel the tension in the air.
Psychiatry was just being discovered in this period. The refugee psychoanalysts coming from Europe came to Hollywood, spread the faith, and it sort of reached the filmmakers.
Please, I'm sick. Can't you see I'm sick?
You're sick, all right.
It seemed to offer an explanation to things.
Right. Now you're in our custody. You have nothing
It was
more.
newer then, and people thought that that's what drove people crazy.
You're perfectly sane.
I'd rather be insane and alive than sane and dead.
It started with prohibition. The line between legal and illegal got fuzzy. Nightlife went underground. That made it even more seductive and dangerous. We could travel that world safely in the pulp magazines with writers like Raymond Chandler and Their Private Eyes. And with a novelist like James Cain, we could find ourselves sucked into a twisted triangle of love, betrayal, and murder. He knew crime had the power of absolute seduction.
Here's to crime.
Crime is only a left-handed form of human endeavor.
Experience has taught me never to trust a policeman. Just when you think one's all right, he turns legit.
One of the things about detective stories, let's say, murder stories, whodunits, is that no matter how bad they are, I've never seen anybody walk out on one. Because it's a riddle, it's a puzzle, and you want to puzzle it out.
Well, it was about 7 o'clock. Anyway, it was dark. What were you doing at the office that late? I'm a homing pigeon. I always come back to the stinking coop no matter how late it is. I've been out peeking under old Sunday sections for a barber named Dominic, whose wife wanted him back. I forget why. Only reason I took the job was because my bank account was trying to crawl under a duck.
As far as our narration goes, I could have done that whole picture without narration, and we discussed it at one time. But we wanted to get the flavor of Chandler. Chandler writes differently than any other writer ever wrote. He has, as he's become a fad, as it were, he has his own style.
We were watched. I didn't see anything. I felt it in my stomach. I was a toad on a wet rock. A snake was looking at the back of my neck.
Oh, no, not
He was the
Father.
first one to say, I didn't mean it really, I was just trying it on for size.
I was just trying it on for size. A lot of things still don't fit.
Trying it on for size has become part of our language now, but he was the first one to ever write that line.
One of the things that came along in fiction was the private detective, the hard-boiled private detective, was not part of the system, is a kind of a loner, almost an urban cowboy.
You've got a nice build for a private detective.
It gets me around.
You can't bribe them, you can't corrupt them, you can't even seduce them in many cases.
You don't mind my sizing you up a little?
Most of us are ex-cops. I worked for the DA, got fired.
This private, I could take you anywhere. You could go down into the ghetto, you could go into the underworld, but you could also go into the haunts of the rich and famous. It gave you access to almost any level of society.
It was a nice little front yard. Cozy. Okay for the average family. Only you'd need a compass to go to the mailbox. The house was all right, too, but it wasn't as big as Buckingham Palace. I had to wait while she sold me to the old folks. It was like waiting to buy a crypt in a mausoleum.
Mr. Marlowe.
And the other thing about the private eye is that he usually never got hurt. He could take you into all these places that you were curious about and yet get out of it alive.
Drop the knife!
Well, you have two groups, and then they begin to cross back and forth. You have Hammett and Chandler, who were the most successful ones who came out of the pulps. And then you have writers like James Cain, who dealt with similar material, but who never really lowered themselves to writing for the pulps. I think Cain probably thought he was a bit above that kind of writing.
James M. Cain had an enormous influence, an enormous effect on all writers. He was basically a novelist.
Mr. Neff, why don't you drop by
He
tomorrow?
wasn't the least bit interested in motion pictures at all at first.
My husband. You were anxious to talk to him, weren't you?
Mostly other screenwriters were doing it,
getting over the
but
idea.
from his books.
There's a speed limit in this state, Mr. Neff. 45 miles an hour.
How fast was I going, officer?
I'd say around 90.
Suppose you get down off your motorcycle and give me a ticket.
Suppose I let you off with a warning this time.
Suppose it doesn't take.
Suppose I have to whack you over the knuckles.
He wrote with a meat cleaver, is what it was. He wrote with a hatchet.
The classic Cain situation, always the triangle, the guy falling in love with the other guy's wife and ending up killing the woman's husband and then coming to no good end.
What are you doing that for? What are you honking the horn for?
Life's a dangerous game, especially with a new breed of woman who's working all the angles, making her own rules. Film noir had a set of rules. Censorship, the Hays Production Code. It was Hollywood's law. Moral guidelines and ethical standards from a church social. The line you couldn't cross.
I'm going to surprise you. It had a very good effect because it made us think. In other words, if we wanted to get something across that was censorable, we couldn't do it openly. We had to do it deviously. We had to be clever, and it usually turned out to be much better than if we had done it straight.
It allows one's imagination to take over where the material is not completely exemplified.
Haven't you tried to buy my loyalty with money and nothing else?
What else is there I can buy you with?
You look for oil sometimes, you hit a gusher.
Susan, tell me, come on. What's bothering you?
The scene in the film Big Combo with Nick Conte kissing her on the eyebrow and then on the cheek and then on the chin and then on the neck. And all the time the camera's moving in on her close-up. And of course, by moving in, you eliminate Nick Conte. The rest is up to the audience. Let them supply the emotion. Let them tell me where he went. Let them tell me what he's doing. There were a three-man board, if I recall correctly, and the first man to talk was a rather youngish guy who immediately lit into me like a 75-millimeter howitzer, you know, and said, how dare I shoot a scene as filthy as that, and what would I could have been thinking of and all that, and he accused me of everything, of having a filthy mind and all. I let him talk. And at the end of it, I said, excuse me, sir, I don't quite understand what you mean. I don't know what's wrong with dialing into a head close-up of a young lady. Now, please be more explicit.
He says, well, tell me, where did Richard Conte go? Where, you tell me that, where'd he go? I said, I haven't the vaguest idea. He may have gone off the stage for a glass of water. I don't know. What are you referring to? With my baby blue eyes, you know? Well, they allowed it.
The sexiness of the noir film is precisely linked to the fact that those guys couldn't show this stuff. So you're obliged to charge the environment to play gay. And on that level, the noir films were very much attuned with the reality of desire.
Give me the key to that locker.
What you really see in film noir is the emergence of a more psychological phenomenon, which is that men have always been endangered by a strong sexual female. They're extremely driven, selfish, ambitious characters, which are generally characteristics associated with male characters.
Kiss me, Mike. I want you to kiss me. Kiss me. The liar's kiss that says I love you.
You know, that Black Widow sensibility comes up from the American male coming back from Europe and finding that the American female has changed her position in society. She's worked during the war. She's much more independent. She may have had affairs during the war. And that's very, threatening to a lot of men.
Margaret will be giving up her job in a few months.
Don't kid yourself, darling. I'll take the 6 weeks maternity leave, and then Junior is going to have a nice nurse. You forget that you married a girl with a career.
You can see it in art and iconography throughout the ages that that's a dangerous figure. A powerful sexual female is a very dangerous figure. And I think in film noir, what you see is the combination of things in a female that you don't see in film, especially American film very often. She's very smart, she's very powerful, and she's extremely sexual.
You drop this?
She uses her sexuality to get what she's after, and what she's after is not the man in the picture. He's another tool. What she's after is something for herself. The Spider-Woman of film noir is identified a lot of real obvious ways. First, through her sexuality. They tend to be characters who have long hair, tight clothes, long fingernails that are actually often composed as claws. They often smoke, which has always been the sign of the woman of loose morals. You often have examples of women controlling the composition by being shot in low angle, and then you cut to a shot of a man shot from high angle so that they have a visual dominance.
Well, the classic femme fatale to me is a woman that's usually getting the man into bed and then into trouble. And I loved playing them because that's the kind of a character that people never forget.
I offered.
Why?
They love to hate me.
What do you want? What are you waiting to see?
What kind of a man you are. What you really are.
Try it on your own, man.
I'm trying you.
They also referred to my eyes as bedroom eyes. And that didn't fit very well for a goody-goody wife or a nice little girlfriend, somebody tending the home.
You're not strong or weak enough.
What is there about a hoodlum that appeals to certain women?
Hoodlums, detectives. Woman doesn't care how a man makes his living, only how he makes love.
There's a certain kind of male fantasy to this violent woman who is uncontrollable, kind of like an untamed animal. And, I think there's something very seductive about that.
So appealing, so dangerous, so lovely to look at. The darling of London, England, Miss Annie Laurie Starr.
Somebody tamed and compliant is less seductive. The fact that it's unobtainable, you touch it, it'll scratch you, is very attractive. I think people like to play with fire.
I wanted a beautiful, innocent, lovable young lady who is a demon, who is vicious, and yet could charm you. I got the two of them together, and I said, Peggy, you are a female dog in heat. And you, John, you're a male dog in heat. And you meet for the first time. Now, you don't know whether one or the other is going to attack. And so you size each other up. And I want all that desire to come out. The only way that this picture, in my opinion, could succeed was to have a love story. A love story that could never, never work out, but yet have an audience rooting for them.
I love the sense of doom in it, and I love the sense of you can just see it coming.
I want a guy with spirit and guts.
That sense of romantic longing and obsession, and knowing that what you are doing is doomed, and you can't stop from doing it.
Look, I don't want to look in that mirror and see nothing but a stick-up man staring back at me.
You better kiss me goodbye, Bart. Because I won't be here when you get back. Come on, Bart. Let's finish it the way we started it, on the level.
These people live right on the edge. And a lot of people identify. A lot of people identify with that. It's something that you react to emotionally. Love in film noir usually takes the form of obsession. It's usually a perversion of love. So it becomes much more passionate and becomes more deadly. Everything is on the edge, and therefore they burn it up faster. They burn up life faster.
Goodbye, baby.
Dirty double-crossing rat!
There's an element in film noir, the way light and shadow is used in such extreme contrast, that is almost religious or spiritual or philosophical.
See any better this way?
The age-old Manichaeist dialectic of light against dark, good against evil.
You can turn it off now, Buster. You're wasting your battery.
And when you look at the film noir film, the lighting complements that. Light sources themselves become part of the content of the scene.
Susie, what are you doing here in the dark?
Very bright, hot sources and very deep, deep shadows.
Well, can we turn the light on now?
No, we can't.
Because of all the things that had happened during the war, the development of faster film stocks, the development of portable cameras, smaller dollies, more contained lighting units, that it was possible to go out at night on the streets using the lights in a very controlled, dramatic way. The sense of the frame, the world being essentially black, which it is at night, and what you see is what you choose to define and pick out with a little bit of light. And this became a signature of film noir. There's almost a giddy euphoria of being able to use lights and the dramatic use of lights in those late 40s, early 50s films.
Put on the lights again, Cora, please.
All right, waste your money.
We wanted to spend as little time with the mechanics, lighting a set, that kind of thing, setups, to give ourselves more time with the actors to get the best possible scenes out of them. With film noir, what we did is, you want to light that? Throw a shadow on it. Get a gobo, and that's all. The shadow did it.
It's the perfect externalization of those characters, a trapped character. There is no light, there is no release, there is no escape. Things are very terrifying and mysterious if you can't see them. So your imagination is forced to take over, which I think is probably the key to how noir material works on the subconscious.
In here, Walter.
A lighting technique that became a signature of the noir films was the use of the Venetian blind, which was a very effective and quick way for the director of photography to create an interesting and unusual lighting pattern on an otherwise blank wall, and would create very interesting psychological effects depending upon the way they were slanted and adjusted. Almost universally in noir films, you see a tremendous sparseness in the production design. Sets have very simple and functional furniture. The walls tend to be just painted flats. You have the visual environment to create a tremendous sense of dramatic isolation and alienation. And that was part of the whole conceit of noir, of using lighting techniques to alter the space psychologically.
You can't underestimate the German influence in it all, and all the German expatriates who were filling the ranks of the Hollywood crafts, and as well as directors and writers.
They brought with them both a dramatic and a visual tradition that was very different from, say, the more vaudeville or the more showman type tradition that had been reflected in American films at the time. Fritz Lang did a trilogy of, I guess you could say, early gangster films, the Mabuza trilogy, which had a tremendous influence not only in German cinema, but I think also in this country. Even going back before that, the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, sets were built in false perspective, tremendous sense of light and dark contrast, tilted angles, foregrounding of objects. These themes became very prominent, I think, in film noir.
Objects are not things that happen to be in a room. Objects are things that we deal with in living. So floors are objects. The position of people towards each other are objects. When you make a movie, you are paying attention to everything all the time, or else you're not making a movie. What you're doing is just photographing something.
What are you trying to do?
We're trying to strap you to the electric chair.
We don't like it when innocent people are blown to jelly in our town.
Noir photography really was concerned with showing characters in environment.
We're going to make you pay for that.
They're trying to railroad me. I don't know why. I never stole any dynamite.
So the deep focus, foreground and background focus being equally sharp, and a tremendous wide visual field opening up behind the actors, gave a tremendous sense of environment and became a very strong element in the noir vocabulary.
Take him in, book him.
Let's go.
You say you found this dynamite in the bathroom.
Well, Pete found it. Show him the dynamite,
Right,
Pete.
Can't you do something to help me?
Deep focus was used in conjunction with wide-angle lenses. It was also used as an economical way of staging a scene without having to do a lot of coverage. A foreground actor would appear quite close to camera. A background actor would come in. They might play a dialogue scene in one shot. The two actors not looking at each other. Foreground actor looking out this way, the background actor looking at the back of the foreground actor's head. They really can't see each other, but they're playing a scene together.
I'm here to arrest you, Emery.
It's fine for the audience because the audience can see both actors quite clearly.
May I ask what for?
And the conceit seemed to work. Of course, it wouldn't work today because you'd want to see close-ups, you'd want to see the actors turn to each other. But it was a quite common method of shooting sometimes a 3-4 minute scene in one shot because they had very short shooting schedules.
Get the young lady.
Yes, sir.
Anybody who was making a B picture wanted to make A pictures. So what we were trying to do was to impress somebody, usually the executives of the studio. And you couldn't usually impress them with the subject matter because it was usually pretty trite. You couldn't impress them with the acting, which was not usually of the best, but you could impress them with setups, for instance. I learned about setups on beat pictures primarily because I had to be inventive as hell. I wanted the executives who were looking at the rushes the next day to look and say, hey, that guy's got, that guy really knows where to put his camera.
I hope it's not too crowded.
Joe Louis was wonderful with setups, absolutely wonderful.
They took a stretch-out Cadillac, and they removed everything from the back of it. And in it, they laid down a 2x12 board. On top of that, they put a little hi-hat in the camera. And then they put a jockey's seat for the operator. The microphones were the first time they've ever used them, were button microphones. We had them all over the place, inside, outside, and then strapped to the top, we had 2 sound men with fish poles that stretched way out with mics.
Longer than I have to. Here goes nothing.
Okay.
I got the 2 of them together, and I said, you know what you're up to. You're going to run into town, look for a parking space. He's going to go in the bank. He's going to rob the bank. A policeman's going to come out. You're going to knock him on the head and get away. That's all.
That's right. Stand right there. Okay.
Whatever dialogue you want between us, whatever comes up, that's how you react.
Hi.
Well, it's a nice get-up.
I like it.
Good-looking gun.
Thanks.
That's English, ain't it?
That's right.
What show you with?
Cheyenne Rodeo.
I was supposed to shoot that and had a 4-day schedule. We shot it in about 3 hours. And far better, I'm sure, than what was broken down on the script with the interior of the bank and the people laying down in the bank and the guys holding their hands up and all that jazz. We left it entirely to the audience's imagination and suggestion.
First stop.
Take off.
Hurry. But I told you to stay in the car.
The shot was so real that people on the street yelled, they held up the bank. And we kept on going, photographing as we went. The shot took 2 miles. 2 miles. And without a cut.
Now, will you? Is there anything in back of us?
A large portion of the Hollywood technical community had learned documentary technique working either within the United States or for various branches of the armed forces. So they were just more schooled in how to shoot in a more raw, less studio-bound, less stylized fashion. But I also think that the experience of the American public with documentaries during the war led to a greater acceptance of semi-documentary or realist techniques in fiction films.
Shooting on location, it's a must for film noir because film noir is reality. It's reality as is.
I just kept going down and down there. It was like going down to the bottom of the world to find my brother.
No matter how great art directors you have, you cannot afford to make it so used as a street is. It's impossible. Somehow you feel it, even if you don't see it. That's the magic of film, and you never know how it happens, but it does happen. Of course, it was against all the studio rules. We have the backlot, shoot it there. I spent $2 million on the street, use it.
I found my brother's body at the bottom there, where they had thrown it away on the rocks by the river. Like an old dirty rag nobody wants. He was dead.
It's incredible city poetry. Like, this body there, lying there. I come from an area where sometimes you would see a body in the street that way.
It was important for film noir to represent real cities, not these vague constructions on a studio backlot.
Christmas Eve in New York.
But to use the look of the city as a part of its stylistic web.
When you're in the city, you've got a space which is immediately dramatic. And you got immediately, you're in a universe which is maze-like and claustrophobic. The characters are always like small fishes in an aquarium where all sorts of stuff is happening. Look at the first sequence of Pickup on South Street. One guy whose job is to steal purses, open purses, a pickpocket in a subway.
The number of underground locations that we see in film noir is quite phenomenal. Underground garages and subways and sewer systems. The manifestation of the underworld, of this secret world, a kind of labyrinth where criminals can hide in the shadows, is the image or representation of a modern hell.
When you're dealing in a doomed world, you go for visual correlatives. It's kind of hard to do a story of doom, you know, on a pleasant sunny day.
The image of Richard Widmark running in the streets at night in the city is a seminal image of film noir. You know, you can't think of film noir without thinking of that image of a man running in the street at night. Something is more, it's more dramatic. It's more dramatic, and it's more, the characters that come out at night are more fascinating, I think. That's really what it's about.
I think our world is headed for chaos, and not very many people seem to be shivering about it. We ought to be shivering in our boots right now. Well, I'm so tired of gangster pictures by then, you know, I'd seen them all and so forth, that I thought the new feeling should be put into it, and I made it more political. I think writers shouldn't separate themselves from their reality. They should bring the reality to what they're doing.
How'd you get that?
At that time, in the 50s, the nuclear stuff was new, and it was kind of frightening what was going on.
Manhattan Project, Los Alamos, Trinity.
I was affected strongly by what I read in the newspapers, what I heard on the comments on the radio and television, and these somehow got into the story. And I think a story of this kind should have that kind of feeling, because we're living in a world, we're not living in a movie. And the movie should reflect the world, the motion picture should reflect the world in some way, and I tried to do that.
When I saw Kiss Me Deadly when I was 12 years old, I didn't understand it. You know, I had no idea what was happening in it. It was shocking and very strong. But to this day, you know, the end I don't quite understand. So it's, you know, but it's one of the pivotal films.
At the very end, the girl wants it, boy, she wants it. And then she flings open the top of the box. She doesn't know. She thinks it's something precious as measured in dollars and cents, when it has to do with security and the future and man's existence.
Well, I mean, it obviously ends with the Holocaust. You know, it just, you know, the doomed character finally finds the bomb, and the world is over. And it's sort of the, you know, it kind of prefigures Strangelove, which, you know, carried that to the same degree in a comic fashion. But you know, it's just a matter of these doomed characters. When are they finally going to explode and then take the world with them? It's sort of the end of the line. You know, you can't go much further.
Dominating one half the world, communism stands solidly opposed to the Western concept of democracy. With over 750 million people under communist rule, nearly 1/3 of the population of the Earth, Soviet Russia holds a commanding position in the future destiny of the world. Since World War II, communism...
It is a way of life, an evil and malignant way of life. It reveals a condition akin to disease that spreads like an epidemic. And like an epidemic, a quarantine is necessary to keep it from infecting this nation.
I guess HUAC is the transition.
They are seeking to weaken America.
It's how America moved into the Cold War, you know, moved from the post-war era into the Eisenhower era. And I guess that critical period there from 52 to 54 where this shift occurred and where you started getting the Red Scare movies and where the communists started becoming the villains.
The noir cycle or series ends, I think, for a number of different reasons. The mood of the country shifts. From a dominant mood of anxiety, the 50s key word is togetherness.
The public has been told that television has finally emerged from the experimental phase, and curiosity alone is expected to sell thousands of receiving sets.
The nuclear family, the turn towards a private, suburban existence, away from the conflicts of the modern man in the city.
Some say that was the end of film noir, but I don't see it that way. Film noir was a look, a tone, a feel. The shadows are still deadly. Murder still stalks the streets. Love and violence still share the same bed. Fate can still put the finger on you for no good reason at all. Life doesn't change, because people don't change.
Mean Streets became a very clear attempt at doing a film noir in color. What I was trying to do is blend what I knew as a reality with that style.
What are you doing? What do you mean, what am I doing? What are you doing to me, huh?
The theme of the young man trying to hustle money and being in conflict with some very powerful forces and not understanding the danger he's in until everything around him falls to pieces.
Well, what'd he say? He said I didn't pay him? He's a fucking liar. Where is he? You paid him? Yeah, I paid him.
Last week.
Yeah.
Last Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think of it as noir in that I love the noir
He's
film.
here.
In that it's as much as possible a homage, my version of a noir. But in reality, I was trying to get as close as possible to my experience.
Hey, wait a minute, Charlie. What? Well, you're right.
I'm right.
Yeah, was it last Tuesday?
Yeah, that's the Tuesday. That was last week. That's before the one that's about to come up.
I guess I'm responding to hearing my uncle speak or my aunt or my father talk about certain films that they like, but they said, but that scene he went inside, you know what they did? Is no, they never show that though. No, they would never show that kind of stuff. They'll never do that, and they'll never show the real workings of how these guys in organized crime deal with each other, or the real workings of somebody who really owes money and tries to get. So my intention was always, why not? Why not really show it?
I borrow money from you because you're the only jerk-off around here that I can borrow money from without paying back, right? Right? Because, that's what you are. That's what I think of you, a jerk-off.
Color brings in a certain level of relationship to the real world. I mean, the real world is in color. Film noir, black and white, is inherently abstracted and more stylized.
I don't give two shits about you or nobody else. Come on.
I think there have been a number of color films that have certainly used noir elements, both visually, stylistically, and in terms of character and plot themes. Arthur Penn comes to mind, Bonnie and Clyde, Night Moves. Certainly Chinatown, I think, preeminently. Larry Kasdan's Body Heat.
What's your name, anyway?
Ned Racine.
Maddie Walker.
You all right?
Yes, I'm fine. My temperature runs a couple of degrees high, around 100. I don't mind. The engine or something.
Maybe you need a tune-up.
Don't tell me. You have just the right tool.
I don't talk like that.
When I started out, I didn't know if I would ever get to direct another film after Body Heat. So I wrote something that I thought I could get through, and that would give me license to go very stylish. I had never directed anything, really, except for a few student films. I wanted to do everything with the camera that I could think of, so I picked a form, a genre, that gave you enormous license for that, which was film noir.
Oh, that's it. That's it. We're gonna kill him. And I think I know how.
It's real, Ben.
It's real, all right. And if we're not careful, it's gonna be the last real thing we do.
I wrote a sort of standard film noir story, but it was really about something else for me. It was really about something that I was seeing in a lot of my friends, which was this desire to hit the big score very quickly. And that's really the story for the central character. You know, he just sort of is impatient, and things are not going as well or as pleasurably, as sensually as he would like. And a woman comes into his life that seems to open the door for him, where he can have all those things he wants immediately.
He has a gun!
Where?
The character of Ned Racine that Bill Hurt plays is not so very different from a lot of people that I know, and a certain American type. And in fact, the villainess, if she can be called that, has the same kind of drive. She's just a hard-working woman who wants to get it all.
If you never trusted me again, you'd probably be smart. But you must believe one thing. I love you. I love you, and I need you.
Violence and sexuality become so much more graphic. And I think a key element in noir was that tension and almost repression.
I already think you're involved.
Filmmaking techniques have also become so much slicker. There's a lot more money available. We don't make B movies really anymore that deal with that kind of material. B movies tend to be like slasher films and so forth. A movies usually have a very strong, production budget and design budget. And film noir films inherently were done as B movies, low budget, and they had certain physical limitations and restrictions that became part of the filmmaking vocabulary. And I don't think we use those so much anymore.
There's been a number of attempts to emulate that style, but that style was tied to a time and place, and that time and place is gone.
If somebody really wanted to make a film using that kind of dialogue, that very terse, Chandler, Hammett, Hemingway type dialogue, would it sell today? I don't know. I don't think so.
And I do really feel that this genre is a historical genre. When you speak of German Expressionism, you speak of a specific time. When you speak of the Nouvelle Vague, that's a specific time. And film noir is a specific time. We don't make film noir anymore.
It's just semantics. What makes noir? Who defines noir? Who defines American film? Who defines what's good and bad in American movies? The dangerous thing is that in any moment in history, we have some machine, some cultural, critical media machine working to define what's good and bad. But it's all up for grabs. We'll know maybe 50 years from now, we'll look back and see what stood the test of time.
People didn't change in 40 years. So if you have seen life truly 40 years ago, it should stand up today. Of course, some of the problems are slightly different, but basic human problems is still the same.
Look, mister, I'm so tired. You'd be doing me a big favor if you'd blow my head off.
Major funding for this series has been provided by the Annenberg CPB Project, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the National Endowment for the Arts, with additional funding from these foundations and individuals, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the annual financial support of viewers like you. To order video cassettes and accompanying books for American cinema, call 1-800-LEARNER or write the Annenberg CPB Collection, P.O. Box 2345, South Burlington, Vermont, 05407.
This is PBS. To order the companion book to the American Cinema series, call 1-800-343-4727 or write to Video Finders, 4401 Sunset Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90027.